I have a lot of friends and family in Louisiana, so a lot of them may already know some of these things. But for the rest of the world, and those who don't know, Louisiana elected a new governor in 2023 named Jeff Landry, and for the first time in 8 years, it's a Republican governor, currently supported by a Republican-led House and Senate.
This body has repeatedly passed this bill, and now you have a governor who will sign it.
Well, Tyler, it was always my position that those clinics should be shut down. If I'd have wanted them open, I wouldn't be standing before you.
I am personally really excited to have Jeff Landry running for governor of Louisiana because we need strong conservative fighters.
It's Republicans gone wild, y'all. And trust me, Governor Jeff Landry has wasted no time laying down the law. Let's take a closer look at a recent bill that he signed into law, which will go into effect in August of this year. Senate Bill 5, Parole Proceedings and Revocation of Parole. Essentially, this bill establishes stricter rules on how to achieve parole and new ways that parole can be denied or reversed, making it easier to keep incarcerated people behind bars and squashing the hope of release for people who are locked up in the state of Louisiana. We can safely call Louisiana officials incarceration enthusiasts. For instance, in order to qualify for parole before the signing of SB 5, an incarcerated person would need a 2/3 vote of a 3-member parole committee or a majority vote from a committee containing more than 3 members in order to qualify for parole. With the signing of SB 5, people applying for parole will need a 3/3 vote from a committee containing 3 members and a unanimous vote from a committee containing more than 3 members in order to qualify for parole. The law also includes a host of provisions that cancel out details that would, at first glance, sound okay. For example, the law is written to say that the release date of people granted parole will be determined by the committee and has to be within 6 months of the parole hearing. Okay, so when you hear that at first, it sounds kind of fair. Like, okay, at the point where they decide that you're a good candidate for parole, they've got to honor that within 6 months so that you aren't held for an exponential amount of time beyond that decision. But it also says that the release date is subject to modification, alteration, or rescission for any reason deemed appropriate or necessary by the committee at any point before the incarcerated person's actual release.
Maybe it'll be better when you get out. 3 votes to revoke. Today, your parole's been revoked.
Another sneaky detail states that the Committee on Parole will have the authority and sole discretion to rescind, modify, reconsider, or otherwise alter any prior decision granting parole release for any reason deemed appropriate by the committee. In 2021, PBS published an article entitled, "Aging Louisiana Prisoners Were Promised a Chance at Parole After 10 Years. Some Are Finally Free." I want to remind you all, as I unravel this legislation, that Louisiana State Penitentiary is the largest maximum security prison in the United States and one of the few prison farms still left, meaning that people are literally sentenced to hard labor every single day for the rest of their lives. I mean, that kind of sounds like slavery. My point is, Louisiana is quite literally profiting off of their prison population. Every imprisoned person at Angola starts out working in the fields. They make as little as 2 cents an hour, and then the agriculture and produce are sold to commodities traders and processing plants for millions of dollars. Also, let's take into account that there's no evidence supporting the idea that longer prison sentences lead to less violent crime. Let's think about this. Louisiana is ranked 50th in crime, and it has one of the highest prison populations in the country. Now, let's quickly talk about this parole committee. 4 of the 7 current Louisiana Parole Board members were appointed by Jeff Landry on February 2nd of this year, including the chair of the board. Now, I can really make my point by just focusing on one of these new appointees. That is Sheriff Stephen W. Prater, the board vice chair. Now, around 2017, I was working in New Orleans producing newscast commercials for the local CBS affiliate. I vividly remember us airing a press conference from the Cato Parish Sheriff, who I realize now is the newly appointed parole board vice chair. In this press conference, he expressed his firm discontent with, at the time, Governor Edwards' decision to enact prison reform that would stimulate release programs for nonviolent offenders. When I first saw this clip that you're about to see, I couldn't help but notice the countenance of the black deputy standing behind Prater. I could be projecting, but it almost seems like they're being forced to stand there. The irony, for me, was just glaring. Like a script taken straight out of the old Confederate playbook. Take a look.
Place out there. I don't want state prisoners, okay? They are a necessary evil to keep the doors open, that we keep a few or keep some out there. And that's the ones that you can work. That's the ones that can pick up trash, the work release programs. But guess what? Those are the ones that they're releasing. In addition to the bad ones, and I call these bad, in addition to them, they're releasing some good ones that we use every day to wash cars, to change oil in our cars, to cook in the kitchen, to do all that where we save money. Well, they're going to let them out.
This, my good friendly friends, this is the man that all parole applicants will need approval from in order to qualify. I think I'll wrap up the parole board there because this has every indication of being intentional. And to be fair, maybe Jeff Landry isn't shy to admit that he has every intention of straying away from incarceration reform and reversing Louisiana's reputation for just loving to lock people up. Maybe he doesn't even see this as a stain on his record and the dignity of the state. I'd ask, how does it truly benefit Louisiana for him to continue elevating its status as one of the most incarcerated states in the country? The point is, many incarcerated people in Louisiana have not and will not qualify for parole, not because they're unsafe to return to society, not because they haven't served the time that relatively speaking fits the crime, not because they haven't taken the steps towards reform, and not because they haven't adequately stated their case. They'll be rejected because of a long list of intentionally drawn out criteria that are handcrafted to make sure that even the most well-reformed members of Louisiana's overly populated prison community will struggle to meet the requirements. In other words, in good old systemic racism fashion, Governor Landry and his radical Republican flunkies have presented the facade that parole is being carefully vetted to ensure public safety, when it's really being shut down in order to support Louisiana's modern-day slave system. It's a black hole that many will never escape. 90% of the people incarcerated at Louisiana State Penitentiary will die there, and 74% of Angola's prison population is black. In the PBS article mentioned earlier, an 84-year-old man named Lester Pearson stepped outside of the Angola State Penitentiary gates for the first time since 1964. Back then, it was promised that he would be eligible for parole in 1974, but that process was never set in motion. Now, decades later, as he exited the gates of the prison, he commented saying, "I always thought that I'd die in prison. I've seen so many people die. I'm not mad about it, I'm disgusted. I did way more than my time. I'm not the same person." Jeff Landry is setting the stage to continue this legacy of false hope, and more incarcerated people in Louisiana will suffer this fate, some of whom have unwillingly pled guilty, feeling that it is their best shot at future redemption rather than facing a Southern white jury in a state that's looking to revive capital punishment with great enthusiasm. If you didn't know this and you think someone else should know, share this with a friend, hit the like button, and tune back in for more. I'm Timme, and you're tuned in with Timme Talks Politics.